What's happening, everyone? My name is James Lynch, and in today's video, I'm going to look back on the year that was in the UFC and talk about the most disappointing fighters in each UFC division. We're just going to pick one from each division, and I'm going to give you my reasons why. And just so you know my criteria for this, it's mainly fighters who didn't win any fights this year. We also sprinkled in some fighters that were inactive, and also a fighter on this list is someone who actually won all their fights, but there were some weird circumstances around him that put him on the most disappointing list. So we're going to start first at flyweight, work our way up, and would love to hear your picks for each division in the comments. I'll also mention a few honorable mentions as we're sort of moving along here. So we're going to start at flyweight, in the flyweight division, I should say. And this weight class right there, current champ Alexander Pantoja. Most disappointing fighter for me. And you could have gone a couple different ways with this one, but for me, I'm going with Muhammad Mokaev, simply because he's not in the UFC anymore. Now look, Muhammad Mokaev won both of his fights this year. He actually won 3 fights because he fought in Brave just this past weekend at the time I'm recording this. But it's the fact that he's not in the UFC. Now that's, the UFC has, their own criteria for who they want to keep and who they don't want to keep. I think in the case of Mokaev, could he have done a little bit more to finish his opponents? Yes, actually he did finish he didn't finish Alex Perez. It was Tim Elliott I was thinking of. Didn't finish Alex Perez. We've seen Alex Perez get finished a number of times. That's a fight he likely, if he finished it, I think we're maybe having a different conversation here. He doesn't finish that fight. And then him and Kopp actually had a pretty bad fight at UFC 304. Combine that with some stuff we heard from not just me, but other fighters that, there were some rumblings behind the scenes that he was difficult to deal with. I think you have to put Mokaev as the most disappointing fighter just because he should be fighting for the title and he's not. He's in another organization. And I think he's partially to blame for this. I know the UFC has sort of, like I said, an idea of who they want in their organization, but he has to be the most disappointing. If you wanted to just stick with fighters in the UFC, we could have gone Amir Albazi. He just had the one fight and it was not competitive against Brandon Moreno. You could have gone that route. I'm okay with that. But other than that, I don't really think there's a lot of fighters here that have been super disappointing this year that were super notable as well. So that's my pick, Muhammad Mokaev. Okay, let's go to bantamweight. For me, this one was easy. Marlon Chito Vera, losing both of his fights this year. And it's not even that he lost, because again, he's fighting pretty good competition here. Lost to Sean O'Malley for the title, lost to Davison Figueiredo. It's that these weren't competitive. I mean, O'Malley dominated him as much as you could dominate someone without finishing. Figueiredo actually dropped Chito Vera in their fight, still ended up winning the fight. And you saw Figueiredo fight Piotr Jan after that. Not that MMA math is everything, but Figueiredo, I think, showed that he's not really a contender. Or maybe he is, but he's not a title contender, let's put it that way. And so it just makes that loss even worse. So yeah, Chito Vera, 2 straight losses this year. His stock went down big time. I don't even really know what you do with him at this point as far as him losing all that. So again, Marlon Chito Vera, the biggest disappointment in the bantamweight division for this past year. Okay, let's go over to featherweight. Now, this is one that may not be a popular pick, but I think there's a lot of reason for it, and I'll explain why in a second. So for me, it is Josh Emmett. So again, Josh Emmett didn't fight this past year. He didn't compete. Had some injuries he had to deal with, again, beyond his control. But the reason it's disappointing to me is 2 reasons. Number one, he's 39 years old. He's not getting any younger. And if Josh wants to get an opportunity fighting for the title, he's got to keep active. And the second thing is he came off one of the biggest knockouts of the year in 2023 over Bryce Mitchell. He had a ton of momentum from that, and that is all gone at this point with him not fighting this year. So again, it's not Emmett's fault. And, a lot of these fighters, obviously, on this list, like it's not like they mean to lose or anything. But I just think in the case of Emmett, nobody was more disappointing. You could have gone with like a Brian Ortega or maybe Yair Rodriguez as well. Those are 2 other names that came to mind. But to me, Emmett is not any younger. He's getting up there in age. To me, this was a big setback for him not competing this year. And we'll see what 2025 looks like. So yeah, Josh Emmett, very disappointing that he didn't get to fight this year. Okay. Our next one at lightweight, this one's easy, and I don't think many people will be debating this one. It was Benoit Saint-Denis. Nobody had more momentum in the lightweight division other than maybe the champ, Islam Makhachev, than Benoit Saint-Denis, but he came into last year, big win over Matt Fivoli, had knockouts over Thiago Moises and Bonfim, and then he looked good in the first round against Dustin Poirier, and then ended up getting finished in the second round. And people thought, okay, he had the staph infection, no big deal, but then he follows that up and gets completely dominated by Renato Moicano. So we'll see what 2025 looks like for Benoit Saint-Denis. At the time I'm recording this, he does not have his next fight booked, but he's still 28. There's room for him to improve and turn things around, but this is a really tough year for Benoit Saint-Denis as far as his stock and everything else. So Benoit Saint-Denis, to me, most disappointing fighter in the division for this year. He's got to be taking that. I can't even think of anyone else in that division right now, and you guys can let me know in the comments. Okay. 170, welterweight. We're going to go there. It's Colby Covington. So I did a video already on fighters that were not like this year. So it's a couple of reasons for Colby. Number one, he only fought once last year, this past year. People wanted to see the Ian Gary fight, so there's that. He had a very bad performance in the fight previously against Leon Edwards, and then he got pretty dominated in that fight with Buckley and ends up losing. I think at the very least, fans expected Colby to be a bit more active this year, especially considered, the year before in 2023, we knew the whole Masvidal assault thing was going on. We thought, okay, maybe he's not allowed to fight because they're waiting to see what happens. I could give him that. But what was the excuse this year? Even if he had the broken foot, I don't think he's out all year, right? Like he should have been back at the very least in the summer, and we didn't see that. We had to wait all the way until December for him to fight. So it's the inactivity, it's the performance against Buckley, it's the performance he had in the fight previously, and the fact that he's 36 and not getting any younger. So yeah, to me, Colby Covington, most disappointing fighter in the welterweight division. Let's move up to middleweight. And this one, it was tough because he fought some good opposition, but I think Father Time has finally caught up to this next guy, and that is Jared Cannonier. He also went 0-2 this year, losing to Nasruddin Imavov, getting finished, and a bit of a controversial finish against Imavov, but I don't think things were going to turn around in that fight. And then Borgio, he ends up, or Kaio, I should say, he ends up losing a decision there, and a pretty decisive decision at that too. So Cannonier 0-2. He's now fighting up and comers like Gregory Rodriguez, because it's like, what do? He's not going to be fighting for a title. But this was a fighter at the end of 2023 that was right up there in the talks of fighting for the title. And if you remember the time Strickland was the champion, Cannonier had a win over him, right? So there was a lot of leverage there. You just think of where he was at the end of last year, and now he's fighting an up-and-comer in Gregory Rodriguez. Very disappointing to see Cannonier fall like this, but age catches up to everyone. He's 40. It's bound to happen. Okay, let's go to light heavyweight. This is another one similar to the Josh Emmett situation, and that is Jan Blachowicz. And same sort of thing. Jan is going to be 42 in February. He didn't fight last year. And it's unfortunate because, that fight he had against Alex Pereira has actually aged quite well, that loss, because he went the distance with him. A lot of fighters have fought Pereira and got finished. So, that was his last fight. That was back in July of 2023. And it was a split decision too. This could have been a year where if Blachowicz won a fight or two, he might have got another title shot, or he might have got back there. So the fact that he wasn't able to, he is now going to be scheduled to fight Carlos Ulberg in March. So that's good. And, I just interviewed Jan this past week. It seems like there's no, hint of retirement or anything along those lines. He's still, ready to compete at that high level. But, when you're an older fighter and you're missing a year-long layoff like this, it's tough to make any sort of run. So Blachowicz is on this list. I would have also accepted Alexander Rakic. He went 0-2 this year. But again, tough opposition. Rakic had to fight Yuri in a fight that was actually pretty competitive until the finish. And then he loses to Ankalaev, who's, very, very good. So yeah, to me, I put Blachowicz ahead of him just because Blachowicz is older and didn't get to fight this year, so he comes in at in the light heavyweight spot. And the last one, we're gonna go with heavyweight. To me, is Sergey Pavlovich. Now, this one's a bit unfair because there's other heavyweights that lost this year too. I think it's just the fact that Pavlovich, there was a thought that maybe he was going to win the interim title in 2023 when he fought Tom Aspinall, and that doesn't end up happening. I can't remember if he was a favorite. I think he might have been like a slight underdog in that fight. Yeah, it was just a slight underdog at -105. So he misses out. Let's go back to last year. He misses out on winning the interim title. And then he fights Volkov, and he was a pretty sizable favorite in that fight, right? He was -245. And he got completely dominated in that fight. So we'll see if he can turn it around. He's got the fight scheduled with Jairzinho Rozenstruik in Saudi Arabia. I think that's a fight he can win, but tough year for Pavlovich, losing that key fight. And, had he won that fight against Volkov, then maybe we're talking about doing a rematch with Aspinall here pretty soon. But now he's got to win a couple for that to happen. So to me, Pavlovich, most disappointing fighter at heavyweight. Because I'm trying to think of other fighters. I mean, I'm sure there was heavyweight fighters that went 0-2 this year, but I'm just thinking of like context and value and what's on the line here. Like Pavlovich, again, fought for an interim title. He wins a fight or two, he could be back there, but right now he's coming off just one fight this past year, and it was a loss and a fight that he was not competitive in. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are your most disappointing fighters per division? Even if you just want to give me a few names, that would be fine, and it'll take a while. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.